Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on June 9th, 2021 at approximately 1:58 p.m. PST. You know, things are turning very nicely. I've got way too many things on the go on occasion. However, that's where the list comes in conveniently. Like I said, now, the question is, of course, I know I've done so. Have you identified anything in your life that you're not personally content with? Because that's the key to turning this whole thing around. This whole world that we're living in right now is so twisted and so knocked out of alignment. Basically because people have been following a intriguing idea of self-indulgence, self-fulfillment, and totally ignoring, or almost totally ignoring, the ramifications thereof, or so it seems. Now, we are talking in my opinion, but the reality of it is, the reason I came back was literally to spread this message that regardless of where you came from, regardless of what your past was, what religion you're following, that every individual on this planet, every single entity, whether they are corporeal or non-corporeal, is of equal worth. Okay. And this is a funny little tool of mine that I developed. Okay, I just stumbled across it. Now, this one is handmade. In other words, I took wood that was produced, right? And the whole thing is simply burned in using a magnifying lens and the sunlight. Okay. Needless to say, I keep that beside me right now. Primarily because it's a little hard to show if it's all the way over the other side of the room. Besides that, I can see where it is. But regardless of what religion you're following, okay, and I do encourage you to absolutely find a spiritual guide, find a spiritual center that you can find people of similar mindset, providing they are promoting the idea of loving thy neighbor as thyself, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Doesn't matter what title you give people. Doesn't matter at all. Okay. But this idea of do unto others what you think they're going to do to you, but do it first and then split, is really a bad road to go down, and it's one that way too many people have been going down lately. Okay, we can go on for hours and tell you what we can see that is wrong or has gotten off kilter. Okay, now we made a decision today because of something that happened to somebody close to us. Okay, my son and I made a very simple decision. We are locking ourselves away from the world, aside from videos, but as far as self-isolating in our own home, we're perfectly fine. But people close to us have run into snags, and therefore we have just categorically decided we're just not leaving the house unless we absolutely have to. Rest assured, if it catches on fire, we're getting out. But in that time, it also means that I will get a lot more accomplished around the house here. Okay, as far as getting things organized, which is why I've got this list beside me. And again, I've mentioned this before in an earlier video. In an earlier video, I mentioned I explained the idea of feng shui. Okay, how Eastern philosophy feng shui works great the way it's listed. Okay, but it's listed for Eastern society. And the reason I say that is because Eastern society takes feng shui throughout its entire culture. Meaning if you're talking about putting certain things in the north window or on the north wall or whatever, that's great if the whole culture is built that way. In Western society, it doesn't work that way. However, the principle is right. By picking a spot in your house where you can focus on the energy of one particular aspect, like for instance, you take your finances, you put them all in one place, right, and leave that as your financial corner. You take another section and you say, that is my family section. That's where I put my family photos. That's where I put my family paraphernalia to bring the family back together. Okay. When you've got a meditation area, when you've got a place that you specifically sit to relax, to meditate, to unwind, if you will. Okay. That, again, is another pocket of energy. And what happens is you take these little pockets, you put little guidelines in, you're not creating or destroying energy, you are simply designing where it goes. Okay, much like irrigation channels to determine where water flows. By doing this, you'll find that the energy in your house becomes a whole lot more stable. Net result, you'll become a lot more relaxed. And the side effect of that is when you do have to leave the house, you'll be more and more equipped to deal with other people. Okay, to deal with other people that are, to deal with other people that may be having their own issues. If you're more relaxed, you'll be able to deal with them a little bit more effectively, thus making their day a little better. All in all, this works out really nicely. Okay, from your standpoint, it works out beautifully. From society's standpoint, we can start this ripple effect with your own home. And this is up to every single individual that I'm talking to. Okay, where do you start? Well, where you're sitting right now. Okay, whether you're in front of a computer, listening on your phone, listening while you're driving down the road, doesn't matter. Well, actually, if you're driving down the road, it does matter. But if you're sitting stable, okay, where you are right this moment is where you start changing things. Okay, which is why I've got a list here, and I figure I'm going to take 2 weeks. I'm going to hide from the world. Aside from, I'm still going to come up and I'm going to get these videos done. There's a number of other videos, like not the least of which is a race, a couple of the races that I've written about in my books that I'm going to get back into detailing. Okay, in the subset called Races of the Worlds. Okay, now again, I do encourage you to take a look at some of the past videos I've got. Speaking of which, hopefully we get a thumbs up on this video. So give us a check on it, however you want to put it. Subscribe to the channel to get the rest of the videos that are coming out. The reality is, for us, my goal with this whole thing originally was to show you how to change your own life using tools that I've personally experienced, that I've personally put to use, or that I've given to enough other people so that I can get feedback from them and have found out that multiple people have used these same tools successfully to change their life. A primary example of the latter part is telling a lot of people how to quit smoking. Now, I never personally started smoking, so I'm not about to find out if it works. I'll just take everybody's input that says it, that have told me it works. Okay, now a couple of the goals that I'm looking at right now, especially over the course of the next 2 weeks, is to take this office and completely organize it so that I get rid of all the junk, and I'll be putting a list together and walking you through it as I do. Right about now, it boils down to just taking the office I'm sitting in and getting it running completely properly. Where the stuff that I've got is getting moved out of the way where it can all work properly, where I can make a couple of repairs. Like, for instance, that chair you see over my shoulder. Hopefully I can figure out how to get the casters to work on it, because it's not working well right now. But it boils down to, from my end, there is a very simple message I came back that I've returned to pass on to people. And that is, very simply, working together, we can make this a much more enjoyable place for most people. Okay, much more prosperous. We can wipe out war, we can wipe out jealousy, we can wipe out famine. Now, this is not an overnight change, but it is in your hands. It's not in my hands, it's not in the hands of the elite or the politicians or the religious people. It's not their fault. It's the individual's fault, and you happen to be one of the individuals. Now, if you're already one of the many that are trying to do decent things, keep up the good work. If you're one of the people that's going, oh, it's somebody else's fault, my ex treated me so poorly, that's why I'm miserable. I have no doubt that if your ex treated you poorly, it didn't make you feel good. But to continue blaming them for it when you're making the choices that are perpetuating the miserable side, that's not their doing. Okay, if they're your ex, they're no longer in touch with you, or theoretically, and if they are, be direct about it. Be as polite as you can. Okay, if they aren't leaving you alone, make it clear as politely as possible that it's time to let you go. And if you're an ex and you're one of these people that's still trying to hang on, let go. Sounds real easy, is not necessarily, but it is really necessary that you do so. By taking that negative aspect of your past. Like I like the way I watched it in a movie one day in Doctor Strange. Okay, the Marvel movie that came out, and I love the way that it showed at the end of the day. Okay, when he says I'm going to lock you into a time loop, and yes, I will go through pain, but pain is an old friend. But by my doing that, I'm trapping you so nobody else gets hurt. Well, if you're hanging on to somebody from your past that is causing you problems, that is hindering you from moving forward, it's time to let them go. It's time to say, okay, didn't work out well. Not every relationship does. Not every business transaction works out well. And there is no doubt many people have been shafted. Many people have gotten the short end of the stick. Okay. And with that in mind, okay, you can hang on to that if you choose. But I will tell you, you're spending an awful lot of time, if you're hanging on to this sort of thing, if you're hanging on to, well, I got such a raw deal and I've lost everything. If you're hanging on to that, then you're spending more time worrying about what you lost than worrying about than putting the effort into gaining a future. Now, in my case, I could run forever with things I've done wrong, with people that I've made mistakes with people I've reacted poorly to, or I can go, everything I did brought me to the point that I'm at right this moment. Same place you are, regardless of what your past is. You're still in the same place. You're right here, right now. This is when you start making changes to your life. This is when you start eliminating the negative things in your life. Okay, start altering them. You cannot change the fact that they happened, but you can determine which way they go from here. As I told one young lass one day, she was telling me how miserable the first 40 years of her life had been. And she was going on and on about how much she'd been walked on, how much she'd been hurt, etc., betrayed. You get the idea. And I cut her off and I said, look, I won't argue that you had a rough life for the first 40 years of your life. But I will tell you, it is up to you. If you desire your life to be better, it is up to you to make the most of the opportunities before you. Now, what those opportunities are, I do not know. If you've got questions, absolutely check the list at the bottom of this video. You'll find a whole list of contact points to get a hold of me. Doesn't matter what the field. I've been working in the consulting field now, in the spiritual guidance field, for 48 years now. Yes, that means I started when I was 10. And I really did. When I started, I was working with older teenagers on how their intimate relationships worked, how to make them work properly. Now understand, I didn't personally date until I was in my early 20s. Okay, but did I understand the way people were at that point? Apparently, considering I had people lined up at before school, recess, lunch, and after school. And then at my 30th grad reunion, the first guy I ran into, he looks at me and he goes, weren't you one of the counselors? And I told him, I says, no, I was actually one of the students. I just did more work than what the two counselors combined did. Because the reality is, kids don't, on the whole, talk to parents. Okay, I'd love to say they do, but they don't. And that applies, quite frankly, even with your kids that are in their 60s with parents in their 80s. They still don't seem to talk to their parents about issues. Okay, would that I had made that I had got that straight before my own parents died. Okay, at this point, I can't do anything about it, really. Well, I can. I mean, I'm a working medium, so I can talk to my parents anytime I please, anytime they're willing. But by taking control of your own life and eliminating the negative things that you've got in your life, not by ignoring them, because the past doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It's like the past doesn't go away because because somebody destroys a chunk of artwork. The past is still there. And rest assured, if you remember it and there was anybody else around, although it may not have been important to them, they still remember it. It's like when you post something on the internet. Even if you don't like it, it's still recorded out there. Okay, as soon as you put it on the net, it is all over the place, and there's no taking it back. Although you can certainly go, oops, I shouldn't have said that. Again, that's a question of taking responsibility for your own actions. Now, getting back to this other little issue, and yes, I know I go back and forth over the same thing time and time and time again. The reason I do that is because I have found that on the whole, people don't hear it the first time. Lord knows I didn't. Okay. I mean, in all reality, especially when you're looking at the field that people are talking about being a spiritual guide. Whether you're a spiritual guide, whether you're a religious leader, if you've got a congregation, if you've got a group of people looking to you for guidance, be that addiction counseling, be it counseling itself. I've talked to some counselors, and I swear, well, I do that a lot, but that's beside the point. I have talked to a lot of counselors, and you're looking at them going, because I get counselors coming to me asking questions. And I'm like, how can you be a counselor in this field that you're claiming to be a counselor in and still make this kind of a dense move? Okay. Like I've talked to counselors that are in absolutely horrendous personal relationships. And yet they are talking to people and guiding them on how to deal with relationships. Now, to me, this is just a massive problem. Now, don't get me wrong. I've been telling people about relationships since I was 10. And like I said, I didn't even date until I was 23. Okay. But the reality of it is that from that standpoint, okay, I still knew what was right and what wasn't. And that's a long story how I got there. Okay, how do I know I knew? Because of the amount of people that I dealt with. And the fact that after 48 years of doing this, I've got in excess of 80,000 clients under my belt. Okay, about 60% of them are repeat or referral clients. In other words, they've dealt with me before, or they've referred somebody else. Okay, so they're either looking for me directly or somebody has said, go look for him. Okay, now this does not make me the best of the best. I am one of these people that if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. Whether you like it or not is not my concern. Whether it's honest or not, that is my concern. Now understand, being honest doesn't mean I'm 100% accurate. It simply means I refuse to lie to you to make you feel better. Which sounds really kind of funky when you realize I'm also a science fiction, science fantasy author. But when you're guiding people, make absolutely certain that you're following the rule of the guidelines or the tools that you're handing people. Make certain that you are using those tools. And if you happen to be one of the people that are following these people, make sure you question, if somebody is talking about peace, and yet they're talking about, let's have peace, and if we go to war, we can have peace. Understand something very, very critically important. And this is for spiritual guides, politicians, religious leaders. It doesn't matter. It's for everybody. To the best of my knowledge and my understanding, war has never brought peace. Superior firepower does not bring peace. It brings quiet. Certainly, if people are shooting big weapons at you, you're going to go for cover, you're going to be quiet. But every time somebody one-ups you and brings a bigger weapon or brings a better tactic, the problem is it precipitates a retaliation on that point. Okay, rules of war. There's only two. One, don't do it. It doesn't work as well as you'd like. Two, if you're going to be silly enough to have a war, get it over with as quick as you can. You minimize the negative, you maximize the positive. I was in a business one day, and I made a comment to the manager, right? Well, first of all, the manager had a problem with one of his staff. He grabbed the staff, took them down to the office, talked to them for maybe 30 seconds, came back out, and the person was back at work. Okay, he took that negative action and he pulled it into the back office out of everybody's sight, staff and customer included. Then he came back out, and so did the staff member. They all went back to work. But this particular manager, I told him I was really happy with the way the store was running. I says, well done, I'm really pleased with it. Well, the same manager that did that with the negative turned around, he called all the way across the entire kitchen. He goes, well done, staff. He says, you're doing a bang-up job. We just got another compliment. I couldn't do it without you. Well, I'll tell you, the change in the energy, like the boost that that gave the staff's morale, was absolutely palpable. You could feel it as clear as day. And this is something that every business owner has to realize, or it would be wise to realize. If you minimize the negative and you maximize the positive, you'll find things change really nicely for the better around you. Not only will productivity turn out better, okay, which means you'll end up with a better bottom line, but you'll have a much happier staff, a much happier clientele, and your problems will minimize. Okay, I remember being in a bar when I used to drink heavily. I was in one bar in particular. There was very little altercation, but that's because the management and staff worked together as a small family. And I'm talking about as a small family, not family mafia style, but family as in family. Okay, they work together better in many cases than the individual staff members worked with their own bloodline families. But the time has come for everybody to look at what's going on in the world. Personally, I do not desire to see the world go back to the way it was. Greed, debauchery, subterfuge, fear, anger, all of these things can go away. We don't require them. Well, you require them in as much as if you don't have them, you don't know that that's the negative side of things. Now, you were given freedom of choice. You have the right to choose what you desire to do. Therefore, you had to have the positive side and the negative. Okay, but you also had to have the middle ground, which is where the 3 points are. Okay, but you have freedom of choice. Frankly, I returned here to tell the entire world, it is time to start focusing on the positive. You've got the freedom of choice to choose to be nice or to choose to be negative. Ask yourself this: which option do you feel makes you feel better? Do you like when people scream at you or yell at you or tell you how stupid you're being? Or do you prefer when they legitimately tell you, nice effort, way to go, let's see if we can, here's a way to possibly make it a little easier for you? Okay, to me it's very simple. The people that have the ability to do things effectively have a responsibility to those that are behind schedule. Okay, the responsibility of the people with the power to make changes and to correct their own life. Their responsibility and their charge is to help the people that are lost. Okay, if they've lost their way, this does not mean they are not savable. This simply means they've lost their way. The people that are still on track, I encourage you to reach out to the people that are a little lost. Whether they are business people that are treating their staff like garbage, or they are family members that are having problems and really forcing kids to do, into a fear-based setup. Maybe you see a pet owner that is dragging an animal around instead of taking it for a walk, dragging it along and, really hauling on the leash. It is up to the people that spot these things to guide the others around them. Every one of you is a spiritual guide, whether you know it or not. The question is, are you going to guide people in a positive fashion, or are you going to encourage them to be abusive and to be cruel? Children are not born greedy, prejudiced, cruel. Okay, people are born, quite frankly, cooperative, loving, curious as all get out, which can be a problem, but okay, they are all looking for guidance, as you yourself may well be. Okay, I hid for the longest time, but as of March 6th of this year, I started producing The Journey, okay, which is a day-by-day change of events. Now, if you look back at my earlier videos, you'll find there's been a lot of change to them. Okay, an awful lot. But, take a look at the back videos. For those of you that are interested in aliens and alien technology, there's a subset of videos I've done called Races of the Worlds. Okay, there is also a subset for many of you. It would be advisable to look back at the videos I've done that are marked language. Language dictates certain spoken words that are very self-debilitating. And it explains in those videos why those words work against you. I do encourage you to subscribe to the channel, take a look at the past videos, share the daylights out of it. Long term, I would like my video channel to go to the point of having literally thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers, of subscribers. I really don't have much use for being on a pedestal, but like one person told me, other people putting you on a pedestal, other people looking up to you is not a problem. It becomes a problem when you start looking down on them. And personally, I see everybody out there as of equal worth, of equal potential, and equal responsibility. Working together, we can make this world a better world for most people. Okay, now I will be back again tomorrow. Okay, until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.